This episode is brought to you by DistroKid. DistroKid is the easiest way for musicians to get their music into all the platforms: Amazon, Apple, Tidal, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Plus, you've got unlimited uploads, and the artist keeps 100% of what they make. But what I love most about DistroKid is their app. The design of it just makes the whole process so easy. Now you can be sure that you're doing everything you need to do to get your music out there. Go to distrokid.com to check it out or download the app now. Welcome to Discograffiti's 2025 Patreon membership super drive. Now more than ever with our Beach Boys series underway, much of which will be living exclusively on our Patreon platform, this is the time to join, and I'm going to make it super easy for you. At the lieutenant or major tier, in addition to 3 or 4 shows a week, access to the gigantic archive of Patreon back episodes, and your backstage pass, you'll also get the following: an onboarding call with me during which you'll tell me all your ideas on how to make the podcast you'd like to hear. And whether I use all, some, or none of your ideas, I'll have listened closely and most importantly, gotten to know you. Plus, 3 months into your membership, you'll be eligible to appear on the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's right, an entire episode all about you, your band, your band's album, your band's tour, or whatever other cool stuff you might be up to. And not only do we make the episode, we promote it for you too. Last but not least, you'll receive a completely free digital copy of Metal Machine Muzak, which otherwise costs $11. Metal Machine Muzak is Discograffiti's double album Lou Reed tribute featuring 16-minute pieces by Lou Barlow from Sebado and Dino Jr., Corey Hansen from Wand, Mark Robinson from Unrest, and W. Cullen Hart from Olivia Tremor Control. Please tell all your music obsessive friends. In fact, if your friends do sign up, be sure to email me at info@discograffiti.com and let me know who they are, because I'll be sending you an additional surprise gift on top of everything else as a token of my gratitude. And now, without further ado, the greatest music commentary podcast in all the land, I bring you Discograffiti.
It seems to me that the music was almost him trying to exercise a lot of this, and obviously didn't fully work. Just the fact that it's a very pure artistic expression. They're not like, hey, we're going to do this, and like Isolation is going to be big on college radio, and they were just doing it because they had to do it. And I love that. I love that, especially in sharp contrast to the music business environment right now. Everything's planned out. It's all to do this, and then this will happen, do this, and then this will happen. They were just like compelled to make something that was unbelievably special.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the music obsessives podcast that gives freaks like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and with 4 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Joy Division, along with our special guest, Mogwai'S Stuart Braithwaite. Here's just a few of the many things Stuart and I discuss in part 2 of this podcast. The avalanche of crazily top-shelf singles that Joy Division released between their 2 LPs, the obscure song from which Joy Division nicked the riff for Love Will Tear Us Apart, the super cool but maddening-at-the-time decision to do an exclusive release of Stuart's all-time favorite Joy Division 45 through a French fanzine, the unfortunate inverse ratio of the band's success to Ian Curtis's worsening epilepsy and suicidal urges, the crucial role that mundane conversation held in Joy Division's band rehearsals, the details surrounding Ian Curtis's tragic suicide, Stuart's favorite album of all time, and a track-by-track rundown of Joy Division's posthumous classic, Closer. If you're a Joy Division superfan like me, you'll want to turn this free version off right now and opt for the director's cut of this episode on our Patreon page, which features 15 additional minutes of essential material. And you can find it in our Patreon shop for mere pennies at patreon.com/discograffiti/shop. Or better yet, just subscribe for access to the complete versions of all our shows. I recommend the Lieutenant tier at the very least, so you can access those director's cuts, but the major tier is what you want if you want it all, including for you true music lovers out there, a guest-packed cornucopia of off-the-beaten-path episodes. Even if you're on the fence, just head over there because it's finally free to become a basic member. Coming up, we've got Dean Wareham rating the entire Galaxy 500 catalog, all the living members of Moby Grape rating their own catalog, Denny Tedesco on his incredible new documentary, The Immediate Family, an unprecedentedly intimate interview with Marilyn Wilson Rutherford and her cousin and Honey's bandmate Ginger Blake, plus Season 3 of the Beach Boys and Your Dreams Come True series, which will absolutely, without question, delve deeper into Pet Sounds and Smile than anyone else ever has in history. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then! October 7th, 1979, Transmission backed with Novelty. This is my very favorite Joy Division song.
It's amazing. You're right. This probably kind of crystallizes everything about the band. Not so much the record. The record is brilliant, but I'm sure you've seen it. But if anyone has not seen the footage of them playing this on TV, it is unbelievable. It's one of the best performances by the whole band, but Ian Curtis in particular. He had a kind of almost possessed stage presence. Like he'd do this weird dance, totally unique. I'm guessing was not thought out. This was just him getting like so into the music that this was what his body was just doing. And it's just an amazing, amazing performance. And this song is just really, 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 really great. I mean,
how much of that dance comes out of epilepsy, either is inspired by it or is like actual epilepsy?
I have no idea. I have no idea, and who knows? But I've read some accounts of when he would get ill at some gigs and his dancing would get really extreme and they would know that that was him about to have a seizure. But I'm not a medical person, so I couldn't really say. But yeah, he was a really, really amazing performer, really enigmatic and unique.
Do you know what that was on? What show that was on?
I think it was on a show called Something Else, which actually I think Tony Wilson, who was one of the owners of Factory Records, presented on local television in Manchester.
You know, my favorite thing about this song is it's a very small touch, but I was listening to it again yesterday and I keyed in. It's that piano, that single piano note that's hit again and again like 1,000 times. There's something
which kind of goes back to I Want to Be Your Dog, very similar thing with the Stooges.
Yeah, that drone. It creates that drone. And the way that Martin Hannett mics it, it's just perfect. It's got the perfect amount of reverb painted onto it. And Ian's vocal is intense. And the fact that it's about the radio, everything about it is absolutely perfect. The song itself is just beyond intense. It's the culmination of everything toward which they've been working for me.
Yeah, 100%.
It never got better.
Yeah, it's a really special record. I mean, we'll get onto them, but I mean, for such an album's band to have singles like Transmission, Atmosphere, and Love Will Tear Us Apart is pretty wild, you know? Those songs could have been on the albums, but they were like making music as they wrote it. And yeah, it's absolutely brilliant.
In a way, this is my favorite period because, you know, they were dropping these singles and all of them were amazing. And all of them were landmarks, legendary songs, and just one after the other. And Novelty, amazing as well. A little bit more of a punk thrust to Novelty. Yeah. This, to me, is their best single all around, and I'll give it 5 stars.
Yeah, 5 for me too. It's incredible.
So they supported the Buzzcocks in a 24-venue UK tour that began in October, which finally allowed the band to quit their regular jobs. It's unreal to think that they still had jobs up to this point. Their success started drawing a local devoted following who were stereotyped as, quote, intense young men dressed in gray overcoats. I love that. And it's also worth noting that their live performances versus their records were a very, very different beast. I've heard both those live records. In contrast to a relatively polished sound on their studio recordings, Joy Division were pretty loud and aggressive during their live performances. It seems like in the band's entire lifetime, I don't know if they were happy with any of Martin Hannett's mixes. As great as those mixes were, and as crucial to their success and to the music success aesthetically, were they happy with anything that he did?
I don't think so. I actually think it kind of always sticks in my head that they were into pretty pro-sounding stuff like Sabbath, like Kraftwerk, and Bowie, obviously. And Martin Hannett was doing something unique and in a weird way sounded thinner. And this seems to be one of their complaints, was that it sounded thin. Whereas Sabbath, Kraftwerk, these things sound huge. And I wonder if Martin Hannett thought, well, the songs are already huge. We don't need to overblow the point, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's just an idea I have. He also sounded like a pain in the ass. So that maybe also colored their view of the finished records.
Yeah, he would fuck with them. I know for Love Will Tear Us Apart, I think it was the drummer. He went back home, everything was fine, and he got a call at 4 a.m. saying, come back down here, I need you to do more work on it. And he said to this day, he can't hear the song without thinking of that, and it drives him nuts. To this day.
Yeah, that's going to upset you.
Yeah. So Joy Division toured Europe in January 1980 as the decade turned, and that March, the band recorded Closer, which we'll talk about in a bit. But first came a few really important singles. March 18th, 1980, Atmosphere, backed with Dead Souls. Originally released as, man, am I going to butcher this, but Licht und Blindheit, which is really pidgin German for light and blindness. That's a French-only limited edition single featuring Atmosphere with Dead Souls on the B-side. These were recorded during a 3-day session in October 1979 with Martin Hannett again, which also produced a version of one of the band's early songs, Ice Age. And unlike other recordings that they did with Hannett, it is worth noting that the band recorded the tracks for these songs while all in the same room. This was not one of those, let's mic up a drum at a time sessions. Yeah. It's interesting to realize that because I can't necessarily, as great as these songs are, I'm not an audio technician. I can't hear a huge difference in the audio. Can you hear a huge difference?
No. And I think what you said about transmission, for me, this single, Atmosphere and Dead Souls, I think they are, if not the best two Joy Division songs, they're definitely in the top 5. They're amazing. And the fact that they put this record out essentially with a fanzine in France is fucking crazy. And I just have to presume that the people at Factory Records didn't know about it, because if one of our bands said, we've got these songs, but we're going to just put them out in France with a fanzine, I would honestly strangle them. These songs are perfect.
It's got to be the coolest decision they ever made.
Yeah.
Thankfully, eventually, that pragmatically was addressed, and it's on every compilation in existence. But that's just an insanely cool decision for a band like this to make.
Yeah. And I bet there's a story to it. I bet whoever ran the fanzine took them out for a great dinner, or they had a crush on some girl that worked there or something. Do you know what I mean? There's got to be some really funny, dumb idea for why it happened. Yeah, it's really amazing. And it I guess it also kind of shows how culture changes your thing, because when I think of Atmosphere, I think of the really amazing Anton Corbijn video with the little Jawas and holding the big picture of Ian Curtis. And that wasn't what they were thinking. They weren't thinking of this kind of iconic moment. They were just we've got 2 songs. We'll give it to fucking Cedric in France. Whatever. Do it. It's amazing. I love it. I really love it. And Dead Souls that's...
Before you go on from Atmosphere, I feel like they could have hung around in this spot. Then that's another perverse thing, is that there's this glittery, epic goth ballroom quality to this. And it feels like they could have burrowed further down this alley had they desired to, because there's a softness here that they never really explored quite so much. They just dropped this and kept moving. And it's how they began the decade. But they could have done a whole album of tracks that had that kind of soft, languid quality to it.
Actually, and this is just me guessing, but I hear a lot of atmosphere in the Cure Disintegration album almost 10 years later. But I think that's maybe they picked up that ball and kind of ran with it.
You know what? I didn't place it. The whole album is a tribute to Atmosphere. That kind of glittery, it's amazing. Atmosphere is 4 minutes and 10 seconds, but there's something about it that just feels inherently epic. And it feels to me like 7 minutes long.
Yeah, it does. It does. And that's another one going back to Disorder. There's definitely a drum fluff in this, which again, I love that too. But I guess it's probably one of the songs where, in retrospect, it does sound like someone who is deeply unhappy as well, because around about this time, and I know all this from reading all the books, but he was in a relationship outside his marriage, and I think that was really struggling with that. And yeah, I think it's just the song has a bit of a kind of cry for help about it too.
Yeah. By the way, I agree with you about Dead Souls. It's pretty much neck and neck with me on Atmosphere. I mean, Atmosphere I like maybe a little bit more, but I also love the idea of writing a song where you start, the song is 5 minutes long and you start singing halfway through it. I mean, there isn't really a need for vocals on it until you're halfway through this song. This single is a very small notch under Transmission for me, just barely really, but hard 5 stars. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. 5 out of 5.
So a lack of sleep and long hours started to destabilize Ian's epilepsy, and his seizures started to become almost uncontrollable. And he often had seizures during performances, which some audience members believed were part of the show. And those seizures apparently left him feeling ashamed and depressed, and the band started getting concerned. April 7th, 1980, Ian Curtis attempted suicide by overdosing on his anti-seizure medication, which is called phenobarbital. The following evening, Joy Division were scheduled to play a gig at the Derby Hall in Bury, and Ian was too ill to perform, so at Rob Gretton's insistence, the band played a combined set with Alan Hempsaw of Crispy Ambulance and Simon Topping of A Certain Ratio singing on the first few songs. When Topping came back towards the end of the set, some audience members threw bottles at the stage. Ian's ill health led to the cancellation of a bunch of other gigs that April. Their final live performance was held at the University of Birmingham's High Hall on May 2nd and included their only performance of Ceremony, one of the last songs that was written by Ian. But okay, let's talk about Love Will Tear Us Apart, backed with These Days. That single came out June 27th, 1980. It was released the month after his suicide, recorded in March. In 2002, New Musical Express named Love Will Tear Us Apart as the greatest single of all time, written about Ian Curtis's troubled relationship with his wife, whom he was married to since 1975, because in October 79, Ian met a Belgian journalist and music promoter named Annick Honoré, and the two of them began a relationship which put a ton of stress on his marriage. Additionally, the song deals with his own struggles with epilepsy, the stress of holding down a day job while doing all this stuff, and his growing career as a singer. And the title of the song, I hope, was an ironic response to Love Will Keep Us Together, a song that is definitely, I would have explained as a guilty pleasure of mine, but as a 53-year-old man, I will just deem a pleasure of mine. And the intro, according to a record producer named Warren Huart, the intro was influenced directly by the noise song Hero. And the main riff in the song was borrowed with permission from a nearly unknown Mancunian band called the Manchester Mekon. And the song is called The Cake Shop Device. Joy Division heard the track being played and asked the founding member, Frank Huart, permission to adapt it. Permission was granted, and thus Love Will Tear Us Apart was born. Did you know all that? I didn't know any of that stuff.
No, I can hear the Noi reference now you mention it, but I didn't know about the other band. But people throw some big words around like perfect and genius. But this is a perfect work of genius. This song is so powerful, so moving, so catchy. It's got like a hook, a perfect chorus in it. It's really, really, really great. And obviously there's slightly kind of, well, it's not slightly, really kind of tragic place it plays in the story of the struggles that resulted in the end of his life as well. But that's really neither here nor there, because it's just a brilliant song. The fact that they couldn't like just jump on top of the pops and be number one with this fucking great song is just awful, because it's so good. If they'd been an active band when this came out, they would have become on a similar level to bands like U2 and The Cure.
Do you know that while they were recording this, that you two were in the studio to see Martin Hannett about producing 11 O'Clock TikTok?
I've read that. Yeah, I've heard that.
This was number one in New Zealand.
Right. Okay. That's good. I mean, it was a big hit. Don't get me wrong, but it would have been a bigger hit if the band had been out to go and play shows and go on TV and do all the usual things bands do when they have an amazing new single that everyone loves. I mean, I'd read about the U2 thing and people kind of implied that U2 had copied them, but I don't really hear that at all, to be totally honest. I'm not really a U2 fan, but they've got their own sound. They didn't need to copy other bands, I think.
I think early on they were more of a copy of Echo and the Bunnymen and less of Joy Division.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Will Sargent's such a influential guitar player. I can probably hear the Edge kind of took a lot from Will Sargent, which, I mean, why wouldn't you? He's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
But this song's amazing. And again, this could have been on closer. Like the fact they had so many good songs that this was just going to be out there on its own. I mean, it's just, they were just in such a kind of rich vein of inspiration. And
yeah. I mean, you know, a lot of things that are this iconic. Probably the most iconic thing about the band is the Unknown Pleasures album cover. I mean, that has been co-opted for T-shirts in a way that, you know, people wearing Ramones shirts who've never heard a Ramones record in the same kind of way. But Love Will Tear Us Apart sonically is the most iconic thing that they've ever done. The amazing thing to me about the song is that even with that and the fact that it's been played to death, it's lost none of its power over all this time.
Yeah.
You know, you take a band like Franz Ferdinand and Interpol that came later. Those bands, you know, no slight on those guys, but those bands could never hope to ensnare even a flicker of the magic from this, because that to me feels like it's a posture. And this is the real thing. And the real thing is terrifying and it's mesmerizing. It's musically innovative, and they both knew and didn't know what they were doing. And the spirit that was guiding this thing was truly like none other I've ever heard. Yeah. And it remains that way to this day, no matter how many times you've heard it.
Yeah. I mean, in defense of Interpol and Franz Ferdinand, who are very good friends of mine, I think having made a song as good as this, it's not that big a dig, because hardly anyone has. You know, this is truly special music.
And by the way, I'm not knocking them.
No, I know you're getting that, because they're in similar styles. It's similar.
Yeah. To use a metaphor, Syd Barrett, and I love thinking about this metaphor as something to illustrate from the inside looking out versus the outside looking in. The inside looking out, when you're talking about real, true mental health insanity, is the Madcap Laughs by Syd Barrett. It's disorganized, it's sloppy, it's frightening, it doesn't make any sense. Not to you and I, not to people who can put a sentence together and illustrate our thoughts, but to someone who's on the outside looking in, The Dark Side of the Moon is insanity. It's well thought out, it's structured, it's not frightening, but it's still a great piece of music. Yeah. It's just not insanity.
Very true. And that's talking about kind of classic. That's a record I've recently got into, actually. And yeah, I really, really like it. My bandmates are constantly laughing at me for getting into 70s Pink Floyd in my late 40s. But
is that your version of a midlife crisis?
Oh yeah. It's the icing on the cake. Yeah. It'll be The Doors next. But,
oh no, say it isn't so, man.
But yeah, you're right. And like, I guess there are kind of parallels with Syd Barrett. I'm not suggesting for one second that Ian Curtis was insane in the way that Syd Barrett maybe could have been described as being. But they were both visionary geniuses, you know, and both struggled with what a brutal industry the music industry is. Like the music industry, and actually Chapel Roan, the pop singer, kind of spoke about this last week. The music industry doesn't give a fuck about musicians. Doesn't give a fuck. Couldn't care less. They're just there to perform in monkeys, to create content, to make money. That's all they care about. And I would say in Joy Division's case, it was naivety rather than exploitation. But there's no way a band with a singer with those health issues should have been working that hard. That dude needed a fucking holiday. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a marriage counselor, whatever, just shit to help him out, like a therapist, just things that in today's society, like the concept of self-care did not exist in 1980. Do you know what I mean? The world was a fucking bin fire. And I like to think that we're trying to get to a place where people are looked after a bit better these days. But sadly, they just weren't back then. Men did not discuss their feelings,
Men are the new women now. I mean, I barely know a single man who doesn't emote like women used to. And I barely know any women, who aren't hitting the workforce hard and trying to carry themselves like a dude and staying away from how they used to be.
That's probably true. We try and fix one problem and create a new one.
Exactly.
That's the modern world.
Yeah.
There's multiple tragedies in this, and I'm not going to pretend because I don't know the people involved, but just as a fan and someone who is in the same industry as them, that definitely jumps out to me. Like, yeah, they needed a break. They didn't need to be fucking putting out 4 records in a year and touring their ass off and like getting their mates to stand in because the singer's too sick and all this stuff. And I mean, I get it. Like, it kind of, you're on tour. Like, we've struggled through to play shows when we definitely should have cancelled them. But I'm thinking, oh God, people are coming to the show and like, oh, if we lose the ticket money from tonight, the whole tour is going to be fucked, and all the kind of thing that in any other industry you would not be thinking about. Like, they would be trying to think of the well-being of the people involved,
What was the hardest time for Mogwai going through this kind of thing that we're talking about now?
Well, our drummer was very, very sick, Martin, and he had heart pacemaker since he was a young boy. And actually not far from you, but we were playing at one of the Altamore's Parties festivals in upstate New York, and after the show his fucking pacemaker started coming out of his body. We had to pull the tour. He was ill for like almost 10 years after that, missed a load of touring, and he had an operation where he had like a 50-50 chance of surviving. So like we were playing in China of all places with a stand-in drummer, and like we like said good luck to him without knowing whether we'd ever talk to him again. It's a different situation, but I mean, your bandmates become your family. So like, if anything really fucking hard happens to your bandmates, unless you're in one of these weird bands that all hate each other, which I'm thankfully not in, it's hard. Yeah, obviously not as hard as the person actually going through it, but yeah, it's definitely like something happened to your family. It's tough.
Yeah, I'm thinking right now of Def Leppard and Rick Allen, just accommodating whatever happens to a bandmate, the drummer with one arm. His
words when he was found was, "I'm a famous drummer and I've lost my arm," which is kind of darkly hilarious. But yeah, it's gonna be a fucking... It's going to be a stress with losing your arm. It's pretty brutal.
That's an incredible sentence. I had no idea. That's amazing. That's going to wake me up in the morning tomorrow morning. I'm going to be laughing my ass off getting out of bed. Oh, hi, I'm Dave Gebrow. I threw my career as a licensed hearing instrument specialist in the trash, sold my house, and moved to the East Coast with my wife and 5-year-old son in order to focus on making the ultimate weekly podcast for music obsessives thrive. But weekly wasn't enough for me, so I bumped it up to 4 shows a week. Becoming a subscriber to Discograffiti's Patreon gives you access to hundreds of exclusive episodes. As a 2-show per week private, you get the weekly show by and for our Patreon family, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. As a 3-show-a-week lieutenant, you'll get early release, ad-free, extended director's cuts of the main show. They're the shows as they were intended to be heard. Plus, you'll gain access to half the Patreon archive and the upcoming Beach Boys Behind the Mirror companion episodes, which will feature dozens of special guests from within the Beach Boys camp talking about and rating their music. But as a 4-show-per-week major, you'll be drowning in a flood of must-hear binge listening, because I'll be bombarding you with episodes about super cool bands that are too subterranean for free Fridays. It's like going to music college, but with a tuition that makes all kinds of sense. Plus, our entire Patreon archive is yours. Discograffiti's Top 10, our Buried Treasure show, Rock Cousteau, our Slag Off show, Queasy Listening, and the Private Press with Paul Major. And all that for the price of only a cup of coffee a week. Times are tough, you say? Fret not, because there's a $1 tier. Or you could just join as a basic member and buy episodes piecemeal from our Patreon shop. Don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not giving. Check out patreon.com/discograffiti to find the tier that's right for you. Once again, that's patreon.com/discograffiti. So this video is actually their only video shot by the band themselves on April 25th, 1980. And Ian hanged himself 3 weeks after the video was recorded. And then Deborah had this phrase, "Love will tear us apart," inscribed on Ian's memorial stone. So this obviously became what he was known for. These days, it's not quite "Love will tear us apart," but it's great as well.
Yeah, this sounds like a much older song. I don't know if this was an unrecorded old song, but it definitely has the same feeling as almost the Ideal for Living songs. It feels like an earlier style of song. But I mean, I know from my own band, sometimes we will write a song and I'm like, oh my God, this could have been on that record. Sometimes you just keep it because it's cool. You're like, well, fuck it, it's a good song.
You're not sure if this was left sitting around from earlier?
It sounds like that to me, but I mean, I could be full of shit. Who knows?
I give this one a 5. I'm guessing you do too.
Yeah, 100%. Seminal classic. Absolutely a 5.
So Bernard Sumner, here's a quote from him. "While we were working on Closer, Ian said to me that doing this album felt very strange because he felt that all his words were writing themselves. He also said that he had this terrible claustrophobic feeling that he was in a whirlpool and being pulled down, drowning." July 18th, 1980, Closer comes out. It was recorded between March 18th through the 30th. It was released 2 months after Ian's suicide. And I really stayed away from this record for a long time. I heard it once because I was just kind of scared of going there. And I don't know why, because I always am going there with all kinds of stuff that is designed to make you all fucked up. So I don't know what it was about this one, because it's not that much more over the top depressively than Unknown Pleasures. But the songs on Closer were drawn from 2 distinct periods, and it's one of my favorite things about the record is that the earlier guitar-driven compositions were written during the latter half of 79, and that's a lot of the stuff on the first side. Atrocity Exhibition, Passover, Colony, A Means to an End, and 24 Hours. And the other songs were written in early 1980 and had more prominent use of synths, which were Isolation, Heart and Soul, The Eternal, and Decades. And I really like how there's almost a chronological split represented with the A and B side of the record. And most of the songs were written or structured during jam sessions in the band's practice room.
Yeah, I think with this record, we go back to the thing with David Bowie's Low. And this almost feels like an answer to David Bowie's Low, which I think was their kind of pinnacle. And I mean, it is for me as well. It's actually, hands down, probably my favorite album of all time. I'm obsessed with it.
Did you ever catch the visual pun on the cover?
No?
You know how it's a profile shot?
Mm-hmm.
Low profile.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Closer by Joy Division is, even though the way they've kind of structured the record is a kind of homage to Bowie, it's almost a unique record. I don't think anyone had ever heard anything like Isolation. And weirdly, for a guy that went on to write loads of huge pop records, the guitar playing on this record's fucking crazy. There's so much like atonal, batshit stuff on it. All the synth work on the second side is so funereal, so beautiful. I think, and you know what, thinking about you avoiding it, I think maybe something about the cover. The cover is so dark.
I think you're right. That is what kept me away from it.
It's a fucking gravestone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that was picked before he killed himself.
In a way funnier, well, funny, because that's not funny, that's just kind of darkly weird, but our new album, The Bad Fire, the guy who did the cover for that came up with the cover before he knew the title, and it's an erupting volcano. So like maybe there's something about when you have a kind of symbiotic relationship with someone who's doing your art, like I'm sure they did and probably still do with Peter Saville, that he could hear it. He was like, yeah, this is a tombstone. This record is a tombstone. And then it kind of became one. But the record deserves more than that. The record deserves more than to be part of a sad story about the end of someone's life, because the record is brilliant. It's a kind of era-defining work of genius. It's so good.
Yeah, and because I think of the profundity that's involved in the heaviness of it, I love the idea of, Sumner would talk about how they would go to rehearsals and sit around and talk about really banal things until they couldn't talk about surface level shit any longer. And then they would pick up their instruments and start recording. They didn't talk about the music or the lyrics. They didn't analyze it. They would probably just talk about sports and the weather. Because how can you, I don't know how you would be able to, maybe if they had, I don't know if they could have helped them, but maybe if they had and they knew what was going on, they would have been able to be more on top of it, or even know that there was a problem. Did they know that he tried to kill himself? Was that public knowledge?
It was knowledge within the band. Yeah, they knew that. They were also very young, So it's kind of tough to look at all of this through a very adult lens because they were essentially kids, and there was just a very different conversation about a lot of this stuff. There wasn't the same understanding that we kind of have now. And culture in the north of England and Scotland is very repressed. Still kind of is. It's toxic masculinity at the end of the day. It's people trying to act tough and pretend that they're too hard to have any fucking problems. And yeah, it's not healthy. And it's better than it was. It's still not great.
Again, coming back to Pink Floyd, because they talk about, how they dealt with Sid and how, embarrassed or ashamed they are because they were kids, because they were English, which was another curse against them at being able to communicate. And, I think maybe there's a lot of connective threads. And by the way, the first song on the record, this is the song. So Stephen Morris in 2020 talked to GQ about how his Tom riff that he was trying to do a saucer full of secrets.
And it was recorded in the Pink Floyd studio as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Going back to the production, I don't think there's any amplifiers used on this record. All the guitars are straight into the desk.
Wow.
Which is weird. No one does that. They would play out the speakers and then record the recordings to give it a kind of live feel. So it's just a strange record on lots and lots of levels, but it's a brilliant record. Really, really great. I think my favorite two songs on it are Isolation and Decades.
Isolation's my favorite, probably. Another thing about Atrocity Exhibition is that Peter Hook and Bernard Sumner swapped instruments when they were writing and recording that one because they were just bored writing on their own instruments. So they swapped. I love how Ian Curtis is singing the most welcoming thing imaginable. This is the way, step inside, but it's as alienating as you can possibly get. So the dichotomy there immediately fucks with you. And at 6 minutes, the song just pounds and pounds at you until your senses kind of, for me anyway, feel modified to accept what this album does to you for the rest of its duration. Isolation, I mean, this is the birth of New Order, right?
Yeah, because it's an electronic pop song. It does have maybe the bleakest lyrics of all his lyrics. The lyrics in Isolation are incredibly bleak, but the music is kind of, you could dance to it. It's pretty jaunty, but...
Yeah, I love that. I love really that it's a dance party, and the guy who's holding the party is saying, I'm ashamed of the person I am. Anytime you can get that dichotomy in your music with music and lyrics, it's such a gold mine to mine that kind of territory. If you can get that split, that schism, it just is so effective. And then that ending where it kind of... Apparently, the original master tape, there was a botched edit by a junior sound engineer, and that was his effort to rescue it. So he did this kind of avant-garde thing to save it.
Yeah, we actually did a similar thing on our first album. There was a song, and we fucked up the ending of it, and rather than just try and do it again because it'd been really hard, we just slowed the tape down. It's one that continued through the ages. But I guess that you don't need to do that stuff with Pro Tools now. You can just edit anything.
Yeah, Isolation is, that's my single favorite song on here. It really is brilliant. And this was the track where I feel like, okay, I love this song. It's my favorite on here. So maybe I'll get New Order now. But Passover, I love this eternal loop. Well, why don't you take it, man? You're wildly familiar with this record. Thanks to you, I was kind of just introduced to it. So, I certainly listened to it, maybe 20, 25 times to become familiar enough to talk with you about it. But go ahead, talk to me about Passover.
A lot of it is very simple, just really, really simple. It's almost like the opposite of some of you're talking about some of the early singles where there's just so much fucking going on and it's overkill. These songs, so many of them are really, really, really simple and they create so much space for the lyrics. And the lyrics are the best they ever wrote. Really, really good. A lot of them are really personal. A lot of them are really weird as well. Heart and Soul's another absolutely amazing song.
Colony, by the way, is Stephen Morris's favorite Joy Division song.
Well, I think all of them kind of shine on this record. Stephen Morris's playing is absolutely brilliant. Bernard's guitar, and I think it was Bernard that played a lot of the synthesizers as well. Maybe Stephen played some too, but I think we mentioned as well, like the saddest song on the record is The Eternal, which is like about a little disabled kid near where he lives. It's just kind of sheer empathy. You know, I think Ian Curtis was clearly someone who just felt things really deeply, but was also from like a kind of working class and then kind of punk rock environment where people would not have been talking too much about their feelings. There was a great quote from Tony Wilson about Joy Division where he said that most punk rock was fuck you and Joy Division was I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Which was not where most people were going from with their music. In fact, I read somewhere, and I'm sure this is true, that the very first record where someone actually really goes into their own feelings was the Plastic Ono Band, the John Lennon Plastic Ono Band record. And that was revolutionary at the time. And so what Joy Division were doing was like just doing that like times 10, you know, like real dissection of the self, dissection of human experience, and not in an academic way, in a like deeply personal way, because he was having these really genuine struggles.
I guess like the biggest difference would be John Lennon Plastic Ono Band and Yoko Ono Plastic Ono Band. The idea was to like get it out of you and leave it behind. And this, it's like the idea was to create something which would then swallow him whole. I don't know if he was intending at this point to kill himself. Just listening to The Eternal and the blank wind that gusts through this song, I don't know about anyone else, but I can hear very easily how someone can go from writing and recording this song to killing themselves, to going almost directly to killing themselves. You can hear it very easily.
I don't know that, and I've heard so much from people that knew him, or anecdotes from people that were in the band, that they actually had a really good time. And it seems to me that the music was almost him trying to exercise a lot of this, and obviously didn't fully work. Some of this music is really quite obtuse as well. And just the fact that it's a very pure artistic expression. They're not like, hey, we're going to do this, and like Isolation is going to be big on college radio. And they were just doing it because they had to do it. And I love that. I love that, especially in sharp contrast to the music business environment right now. Everything's planned out. It's all to do this, and then this will happen, do this, and then this will happen. They were just like compelled to make something that was unbelievably special.
This episode is brought to you in part by Bespoke LA. Located in the Fairfax district of Los Angeles, Bespoke LA is the modern podcaster's dream come true. It's got 2 podcast pods available, one with audio only and the other with both audio and video. Just think, you can start your own podcast tomorrow without investing a single penny in equipment. What, you don't have experience editing? Don't even sweat it. For an additional fee, Bespoke LA can edit your podcast. Or not, it's entirely up to you. Rates start at $75 an hour with discounts if you book 4 sessions at once. Go to bespokela.com/podcast. That's BSPOKELA.com/podcast for more information or to book your time today. And be sure to tell them that Dave sent you for a one-time 25% discount. Tony Wilson said to Bernard Sumner at the time, you know, Bernard, this time next year, you'll be lounging by a swimming pool in LA with a cocktail in your hand, because he was so dead set on the idea that this was going to be a huge commercial success.
I bet he said that to all his fucking bands. But in this case, he was right, you know, and it should have been. It should have been. Obviously, someone losing their life is the saddest part of it all. But from a musical point of view, Joy Division should have toured the world and become as big as U2. That is in itself sad, you know?
Yeah. From the vantage point of somebody like myself who has a show like this is very difficult music to talk about, because I could go track by track and talk about, you know, stuff behind the record, little anecdotes and things that occurred in the studio, but it's completely beside the point. The music is so raw and comes from such a real place that the terrifying experience of just taking it in and living inside of it. It's enough said about it, really. There's not much that you can add to it other than that. I have all these notes about the songs, and I feel honestly just compelled to skip through all of them. But I just want to read the capsule review that I wrote for this. Okay. So I suffer from depression, but I remember listening to this album once, and I made a mental note to never return to it because it actually palpably scared me. Probably because of the cover, like that Dead Can Dance kind of, non-inviting kind of vibe to it. So since that time, I never heard it again, even though I've had Substance and Unknown Pleasure for decades and never hesitated to visit those releases and love what I'd heard by the band. But thanks to this trawl, and thanks to this interview and to you, Stuart, it forced me to revisit a work of art that, like In Utero, can certainly stand as both an LP and a suicide note. Every single song on here is absolutely amazing, and while definitely as difficult to listen as I remember it being, it's awe-inspiringly wonderful and beautiful, and a sad testament to Ian's genius, and a testament to an incredibly sympathetic bunch of young men who knew instinctively how to couch their poor friend's depressed ruminations. Too bad they weren't able to buffer him up in other ways as well. But like you said, young men, not exactly the best communicators. This is a masterpiece, 5 stars. It's really hard to say which LP I prefer, but unquestionably 5 stars.
Yeah, 5 for me too. It's a really, really special record and a foundational record. If you could somehow go back in time and erase this record from existing, you would lose a lot of amazing music from years to come, because this has inspired so many musicians over the years. It's one of those albums. It's a bit like the Velvet Underground and Nico or something like that like people heard it and were like, wow, there's more we can do with this than we previously thought.
And honestly, it's not quite as alienating as I remember it. There's melodies here that you can sing on to this record, which is a weird thing to say, but there's tunes in here, and they're beautiful songs, great songs.
Yeah, I mean, Decades in particular, Decades is like so musical and so inventive and obviously stark and tragic and everything. But yeah, it's brilliant. And like we mentioned before, like Isolation could be a hit. Like there's so much going on here, as well as all the weird atonal stuff. But even amongst that, you're right, there are melodies and hooks and everything.
Yeah. So just to touch on what happened after this, the band was scheduled to commence their first U.S.-Canada tour in May 1980. Ian apparently, by all accounts, was psyched about it, but his marriage was strained. Deborah was really stressed out about Anik Honoré. And, he was also anxious about how American audiences were going to react to his epilepsy. And the evening before the band were due to depart for America, Ian returned to his Macclesfield home to talk to Deborah. He asked her to drop an impending divorce suit and asked her to leave him alone in the house until he caught a train to Manchester the following morning. Early on May 18th, 1980, having spent the night watching the Werner Herzog film Stroszek and listening to Iggy Pop's album The Idiot from '77, Ian hanged himself in his kitchen, and Deborah discovered his body later that day when she'd returned. In 2005, Tony Wilson said, "I think all of us made the mistake of not thinking his suicide was going to happen. We all completely underestimated the danger. We didn't take it seriously. That's how stupid we were." And then the quote that I was thinking of when we were talking at the beginning was from John Savage, and his obituary said, "Now no one will remember what his work with Joy Division was like when he was alive. It'll be perceived as tragic rather than courageous," which I thought was really profound. And Morris said that even without Curtis's death, it's unlikely that Joy Division would have endured, because the members had made a pact long before Curtis's death that should any member leave, the remaining members would change the band name. Between July and October 1980, the remaining members, with the addition of keyboardist and guitarist Gillian Gilbert, regrouped under the name New Order with Sumner on vocals. Gilbert had befriended the band and played guitar at a Joy Division performance when Curtis had been unable to play. New Order struggled in their early years to escape the shadow of Joy Division, but man, did they go on to achieve crazy commercial success with a much different, more upbeat and dance-oriented sound, which oddly was born out of Closer. And their debut single is really the one that is the blurred lines where Joy Division and New Order cross. It's Ceremony backed with In a Lonely Place. That was released in 1981. Both songs were recorded as Joy Division prior to Ian's death, but they were re-recorded and carried over to the New Order reformation. Ceremony was the last of the Joy Division songs to be composed, and the lyrics were written by Ian Curtis. The group wrote the songs a few weeks before Ian died to try and heal him through music and to keep him involved in the band and remind him of what a great future he had. And Sumner concluded that unfortunately it didn't work. You know, at the time that they wrote it, the group felt that the song represented a major step forward and had the potential to be a major hit. You could hear versions of both those songs on the Heart and Soul 4-disc box set, the sessions from May 14th, 1980, 4 days before Ian's suicide. And that was the group's last recording. And because Ian had never transcribed the lyrics to Ceremony, and because his singing was muted to the point of being almost completely inaudible on all the surviving recordings, Sumner said he had to put him through a graphic equalizer to approximate the lyrics. Joy Division, of course, along with New Order, were nominated for induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2023. Okay, so obviously you can't really do a top 3 albums unless, you know, if you count Warsaw.
I would call Substance an album. This is the other thing, just because maybe I grew up with it and they're all so good. It feels almost unfair to kind of rank them because they're so close to each other. But I would say Closer, Unknown Pleasures, and Substance, but they're so close to each other. It's not like one's good and one sucks. They're all amazing.
Are you saying Substance number 1?
No, I'm saying Closer number 1.
Closer number 1. Okay. If we're using Substance, then I would probably say Substance number 3, Closer number 2, Unknown Pleasures number 1.
Yeah, we're close.
And if you throw the singles in, that fucks me up even more. And I didn't do a summary of this band. I wanted to use just silence in place of some kind of summary of these guys. There's something so wholly unique about these guys. There's like a few bands that I'm saving that other people have asked me, can I do them? And I just say, let's pick something else because I want to save it for the right person. And you were the guy for this. There was absolutely no question in my mind. You were the guy.
Appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I kind of like, my house is like a little bit of a kind of shrine to Joy Division. I've got like, you know, Steve Keen that did the Wowie Zowie Pavement cover. I've got like huge paintings he did of Closer, Unknown Pleasures, Still, and Substance. I've got like Kevin Cummings' photo of Ian Curtis in his rehearsal room. I've got like Joy Division shit all over my house. To me, they're everything a band should be. They had a vision. They completely stuck to it. They never did anything cheesy. You know, it was very pure. When I think of the song Heart and Soul, that's what I think about Joy Division. That completely encapsulates what that band were all about.
All right, so first of all, I want to plug The Bad Fire. It's a great, great record. I honestly don't know, speaking of going on and on and on and still being great, I don't know how you guys are still a phenomenal band. It's one of your best records. You're trying a lot of new things. I think, maybe you don't think so. I'm not sure if you do or don't. Do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I definitely think there's things on this record that we've never done before. There's also things that we've done a million times, but we've kind of done them in a slightly different way or whatever. But yeah, I'm really happy with it.
Is there anything else you want to plug?
Oh, good, man. This has been a blast. Talking about Joy Division for 3 hours, I'm into it.
This is incredible, man. I'm so psyched, especially coming off of the Beach Boys to go from, you know, sun, fun, and surf to go dive into the darkness with you.
Awesome, David. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. I'll see you soon.
All right, that about does it. Stay tuned because next week we've got the first part of a series I've been really psyched about for a long time now. Dean Wareham discussing and rating the entire Galaxy 500 discography. No question about it, this is one of the best series in Discograffiti history. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside just like you and I. Then come Monday, the major tier gets a very special treat. And man, do I mean special. Monday's bonus episode is the introduction to a new prison interview series. Ever hear of Big Lurch? Go ahead, Google him. This Monday's episode pulls you into the world I've been inhabiting for about a decade now. I've been in correspondence with an incarcerated rapper who got into a bit of a scrape with the law after descending into a PCP-induced blackout and emerging having realized that he may have just cannibalized someone. Don't miss my 3-part Big Lurch prison interview, a definite Discograffiti first. There will be a very short sneak peek running publicly for free on Monday morning, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. Don't miss it, or you'll only be getting part of the story. And then on Wednesday, the Lieutenant tier gets their early release, ad-free, super extended director's cut of Part 1 of the Dean Wareham Rates Galaxy 500 podcast. It's the episode as it was truly intended to be heard, with all the essentials left intact. And then come Friday, everyone else gets to join in on the action. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful wife and son, Jen and Mason, Stuart Braithwaite, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, Jay Schultz, Bespoke LA, my mom, my dad, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator, and much, much more. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into cutting-edge punk action is to leap headfirst into the Sonic Boom Rates Spacemen 3 series. That's episodes 183 to 186. Tom Morello rates the MC5, that's 177. No Age's Randy Randall rates Jesus Lizard, that's 172. Michael Imperioli rates the Smiths, that's 164 and 165. Mike Watt rates the Minutemen, that's 124 to 126. The David Pajo series on Slint, that's 94 to 101. Anthony Fantano rates the Velvet Underground, that's 32 and 33. Nirvana is 30. Bob Mayer rates the Replacements as 28 and 29. Pixies is 18. Jen Pelly on the Raincoats is 15. PJ Harvey is 12. Cocteau Twins is episode 3. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, May 2nd, we're coming at you with Part 1 of Dean Wareham Rates Galaxy 500. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti!